Hey, welcome to a Wiser Retirement podcast. Leaving a financial legacy isn't something that happens by accident. It takes planning. We've put together a guide with 7 steps to leave a financial legacy and have made it available for free on our website. This guide covers designing your legacy, estate planning, financial education, and protecting your legacy. The link to download 7 steps to leave a financial legacy is listed in the episode description, or you can go to wiserinvestor.com, scroll to the bottom, and find it there. Now on to today's episode.
Welcome to a Wiser Retirement Podcast, where we believe the best financial advice should always be conflict-free. I'm your host, Casey Smith, guiding you to financial freedom. Today is my co-host, Brad Lyons. Hey, Brad.
Hi, Casey.
So today we're going to wrap up our podcast theme for this quarter, which is leaving a legacy. It's been a fun quarter. Ironically, we started the quarter off with the office air conditioning not working, and we're going to end the quarter with the AC not working. The good news is that we finally talked sense into the new landlord, and we are getting a new unit now. So hopefully by the time you guys hear this podcast, we'll be nice and cool inside Wiser Global Headquarters in Marietta, Georgia.
Very nice. And we don't want our listeners to think that we had to, go, what is this, 8 weeks or so, 9 weeks, 10 weeks without air conditioning. There was a time in there where we had air conditioning.
Yeah, it was 3 solid weeks with no AC, but it was different times. And we had to use, this is a great book. Is it Andrew Voss? I know his last name's Voss. It's a book on negotiating. He was a former FBI negotiator. And I'll say I probably used a few tactics out of his book to get others to feel that the air conditioning should be replaced. We had to play to a lot of egos.
I'm sure he would be pleased with his background in FBI, knowing that we're utilizing it to get a better air conditioning.
Yes, exactly. But it worked. Great book. It's a yellow book. I can't remember the name of the color or the full name of the author. But anyway, it was an interesting read. Okay, so we're kind of recapping on leaving a legacy. And, Brad, you were talking earlier before we got on here about, what is that, what that means exactly. I think so many times people just kind of die and they just kind of leave whatever's left to the next generation, right?
Yeah.
There's not much thought really put into it other than maybe a will.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not unusual. I mean, discussing our demise is just not something that we're kind of built to do.
Right.
So, and there's that whole point of, we didn't, and we don't want our children to be overly concerned about our finances, not just from oh my goodness, what have mom and dad done, but we want them to go on and flourish and have their own life and not have to worry too much about our lives, And so we kind of hide it from our children. But you know what? They're not kids anymore. It's time to bring them into the process in order for them to understand what it took to raise them, what it took to have your life, what it took to get here at this point, and what may or may not be left when it's all done.
Yeah, I think I kind of came through the quarter with the reinforcement that we have to teach the next generation how to handle money. If you're a successful business owner, you got to teach the next generation how to also be successful business owners or be successful at whatever they're pursuing. And success doesn't always equal money. A lot of times it doesn't actually. I read recently someone defined wealth versus being rich. And I tell this to my kids all the time. They see something that is perceived to be much nicer than maybe what we have. And I say, well, that looks like a rich family, meaning that they spend every single penny and they make all the payments, right? But if you looked inside the bank account's probably not super stellar to match the size of the house and the price of the car. But I saw a different angle on that recently where you're wealthy if you can do the things that you want to do. You have freedom. You're not enslaved to, I have to be at work so I can make that boat payment or that house payment that I overextended myself on, right? Or that credit card debt that I got to get eliminated. And so what that means is that teacher, firemen, policemen, all of them can be wealthy.
Exactly.
Right? You can make $60,000 a year and still be wealthy. It's the not getting yourself into a situation where you're forced to work and be a slave to payments. And there's a lot of rich people who are not wealthy. Is I get the lesson to be learned there. And so how do we teach that to the next generation? That's very important. And I think it's a sense of probably saying no, a sense of saying you have to earn versus being given. Our kids are at a private school, and they have family serve day, so they go out and they serve the community. And this last year, my daughter had something private going on, and so I had to be with her, and we couldn't participate. My son ended up going by himself, and he came back and told my wife, he said, "Mom, you won't believe we had to like mow this field for this lady. And they had to, like 3 or 4 mowers out there for us to kind of clean up her yard. And no one knew how to start a lawnmower." That was like, that's entitlement right there. Nobody in 9th grade at his school knew how to start a lawnmower, at least the ones that were with him in that group, which are probably 7 to 8, if I had to guess.
I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall to have heard your wife's answer, because when your son started out saying, "You won't believe," her first thought was, "Yes, I would."
Yes, I would. Exactly. Not that he mows the yard himself, but he has mowed the yard, and he does know how to start the mower. That is something basic that he's learned. I don't know that the quality of the cut would be that great, but
well, throughout this whole series, it's been interesting is that you and I, through the research that we've done, we've kind of perhaps changed our thought and our thinking a little bit on what a legacy really is.
Right.
And we've had some interesting discussions on this, and we've had some guest speakers all chiming in on it. And a legacy, is many things, and it's all encompassing. And one aspect actually helps to produce other aspects as well. So any financial aspect can actually produce other aspects in our legacy to our successive generations, and that which we have received from previous generations. Okay. So I think that it's been an interesting series of podcasts talking about legacy, inheritances, passing on values from generation to generation, telling stories about the generations themselves, and allowing for the next generation to incorporate this into their lives and seeing what's produced from that. And then actually kind of sitting back and enjoying, kind of seeing how this is going to play out over time. So, and making the appropriate plans for that to happen.
Well, for the next, I guess the next week, you can still go online and download a white paper on 7 steps to leave a financial legacy. Number 1 on that list was design your legacy. We talked about, what is it you want to leave behind? It's not just monetary, right? It's your value system. It's thinking of others, that type of thing. Assembling the right team. We've had Jordan Sudi from Sudi CPA on with us. We've had Doug Butler. We had I just did one with Randy Hargett, our insurance person. These are all people that we've assembled around our team, for our clients that support them, with us being the quarterback on that for 300 something plus families. And it works well. We have a specialist in each area, and ultimately in a fee-only environment, which is what we talked about through the podcast series. That's the best place to have a quarterback for you financially, is someone who's not trying to sell you anything. But we do have partners that do sell stuff, when everyone knows they sell stuff, but we all know it's part of the plan, right?
Right. And we sit in the middle, sort of, with our clients in a kind of a hub and spoke arrangement, right? Where we're in the hub, and we reach out and bring in additional resources as needed. And when we do that, we bring them into the plan itself. And so now everybody is looking at the same plan bringing their expertise. I think in an individual sense, let's say that without a plan, each of those individuals or in their professional skills comes to the table and does the best they can, but they only know a portion or a slice, and they give full advice based upon that. Okay. With a plan and a financial planner such as us, we expose all the professionals to the entire plan and show them where their skill sets and their products and their services come into the plan to enhance it as one complete plan, rather than 4 or 5 different plans that hopefully come together if in the absence of a written financial plan.
Yeah, we had our dear friend Gary Bottoms on the podcast as well, and in his world, and he's an old timer. He's been doing this a long time. But in his world, everything starts with insurance and builds from there. And I think that was really prevalent in that podcast because I'm like, man, the world's so different now. Those type of relationships I think are expiring to where everything starts with insurance and builds out. Everything really should start in the center with a financial plan. If it calls for insurance, and you go to that expert, to add that component in the plan. But it kind of reminded me of like, man, this is how the world used to be 20 years ago.
Right. And I think in that previous generation, that professional, that resource, the insurance agent, was the one that brought it up.
Yeah, that's right. And it all started there. That was the center hub was insurance. And then
right.
because mutual funds weren't as popular, or you had to go buy a mutual fund from a broker. You had a stockbroker who was just trying to sell you stuff. You had an insurance guy who was trying to think more about planning. So planning to originate within an insurance firm sort of makes sense because they're the only ones that are really forward thinking. Right. When those firms kind of married each other, that started this whole holistic approach. And then obviously there was a very small minority, but in the mid 80s, there were starting to be fee-based firms, which morphed into fee-only firms, many of them eventually. So anyway, that was kind of like a time capsule episode of like,
and I've been through most of it.
Right. We talked about having James Hughes on. That was kind of a highlight.
To kick this off. Exactly.
Yeah, that was kind of
fascinating man. That guy has seen a lot. Okay.
That's right.
And simply through the experiences that he's had, the people that he has met, and the counsel that he has given, it was a wealth of information in that 30-minute or 45-minute podcast that we had with him. What a true privilege it was to spend some time with that man.
And then talking with our friends up at the Ohio law firm, talking about, man, when your kid goes to college and they're 18, they got to have power of attorney and medical directives because hospital's not going to talk to you. I didn't think about that stuff, right? So that's something we still need to act on. We probably need to put together a package for people with kids going to college so they have quick access to those kind of documents.
Exactly. It comes as quite a shock when a parent gets on that student portal and realizes that they won't share anything with that parent anymore. And it expands not just between academic and scholastic, it expands all the way to life choices that student has made and the results that occur. So it's an amazing thing when that child turns 18. And although they're still very dependent on mom and dad, the law sees it otherwise.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I think we've covered the quarter fairly well. If you haven't listened to each section or each podcast, I would encourage you to do so, especially the ones where we talk about how to build a legacy. It's just thinking beyond your own generation. It's thinking about the next generation. And, I think there's probably ways to do it, even if you have grown adult children. But if you have little small children at home, and now is a great time to start acting stuff out yourself so that you can lead by example versus leading by with just words.
Mm-hmm. And learning how to have the conversation, to have to begin the communication between generations. It can lead to all sorts of other wonderful conversations as well, as to telling stories about growing up and years that have gone by and old family vacations and decisions that were made and so on. And so it really can become a very intimate time that you spend with family members when you're having this conversation about legacy and inheritance and how it all came about from grandparents' farm, to parents, getting college educations and going out and having careers and raising children, and who have gone up and had careers and raised their own children and so on. And you see these generational effect all stemming from similar value systems that are funded with resources that are being passed from generation to generation in order to use them as a good steward.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to leave something. It's either intentional or it's accidental. And we talked a little bit about this. And intentional is following the 7 steps that we're outlining, in our white paper there, and all the conversations that we've had across these podcasts. Accidental is, I meant to spend it, but I just didn't get there. And so there's something left over. The kids get it, and it's a gift at that point, There was no conversation. There was no intent. There was no, explaining. There was no storytelling that goes along with it. And so what is the receiver supposed to think? Okay, other than it was a gift. So we're going to leave something. It's just how do we want to, what do we want that thought behind it to be, and how do we want to express that, and how do we want to see it received, and utilized, for their, future. So,
right.
Yeah. So the legacy is often in the communication.
So next quarter, we're going to shift gears again, and I'm getting more excited about this. I think this is topics that we often get asked as planners: is in your 20s, what should you be doing? In your 30s, what should you be doing financially? 40, 50, 60, because they always ask one question. Everyone asks one question: how am I doing compared to others my age?
Right.
And I'm like, well, less than 1% of the population probably uses wealth managers. So in the end, you're doing better than most, because
You're already doing better. Yeah.
You're thinking about it, which I think majority of people don't think about it. I think I understand their question. What they're really asking is, how am I doing versus college educated people my age in my area. But ultimately, Michaela here at Wiser, she's our planning associate. She put together a really good white paper on each stage of life and what you should have accomplished financially by each stage. And we'll post that starting October 3rd will be our first episode as we dive into this new theme that will take us out through the rest of the year, actually, just doing various different planning themes. So probably a good time to talk about big picture as we roll into a new year. Also for us here at Wiser, this is time to be looking at Roth conversions. So if you have a lower income this year, you've been out of work, or maybe you're not working on purpose, income is low, you might have an opportunity to convert IRA money to Roth money. So that's something that we're starting to look at in all of our clients' accounts.
Well, this is the work that goes on behind the scenes as we're taking care of each one of our clients and determining what's best for them at any given time. And one of the circumstances, they retired earlier this year, so it was a working year, but their income may be very low relative to what it's been in the past, and so it's a prime opportunity to convert some of this money. Again, our CPA, associates are, trying to mitigate taxes this year, in any given year. We're looking at the rest of their lives, our clients' lives, and minimizing taxes over the long haul. And so when we look at a holistic approach of Roth conversions are a very, very savvy tool that we look at for every single one of our clients. And it's really an interesting, strategy that that when utilized properly can be very much a wealth enhancer.
Especially if you can deduct, at the 12% tax bracket. So if you can convert at 12%, it's not going to get cheaper than that. So
right.
It really just comes into how much income do you have, and then if you move money from your IRA to your Roth, it becomes taxable, but it grows tax free going forward. If you're barely scraping by, it's not a good strategy because you need the money too soon. But if this is money you're deferring, possibly to the next generation, this is a good strategy. Another thing too is that, man, we just had a bad week in the market. 2 days ago from this recording, or yesterday from this recording, the Dow was down about 1,000 points. It is a good time, and we do this for our clients automatically. So if you're a client listening, we're already doing this. You don't have to call us, but it is a good time to be looking at tax loss harvesting. You have the S&P down 20% year to date. There's opportunities to sell that, take a taxable loss. You're out of the market for a few milliseconds. You're going to buy something else back that's similar. So you stay in the market. We're not saying market time, but it's a great time to take a realized tax loss on your tax return, and then you ride back up as the market rebounds whenever that might be. So it's for financial advisors, if you're not doing this for your clients, you're not providing a real value as an asset manager, because this is where people are busy working. Someone needs to be at the helm, watching the big picture. And why wouldn't you create tax credits for yourself going forward? As long as you can get back into the similar asset class or the same asset class, that's really all that matters. So Brad's been doing that for us. Another strategy to be thinking about this quarter is what they call backdoor Roth IRAs. So a backdoor Roth IRA means that you make too much money to contribute to a Roth. So what you can do is contribute to an IRA. You can simply do not deduct it on your tax return. You just make an after-tax contribution to an IRA to the max, either $6,000 if you're over 50, it's $7,000, and then you immediately convert that into a Roth. Roth conversions are taxable, right? But because you didn't take a tax deduction, you don't have to pay the tax on the transfer because it didn't make anything, right? It's all cash. So then you can roll that into your Roth IRA. Now, if you have an IRA already, it's last in, first out. So you'd have to convert your IRA to Roth before you could do that, and it would make sense. For some of our clients, we actually take IRA money and put it back into their 401k plan. And that way they can start doing backdoor Roths on a regular basis. So anyway, those are just 3 strategies you should be thinking about between September and December 1st inside your portfolios.
Absolutely. And you can see how tax loss harvesting and Roth conversions can actually be complementary to one another, because when you're tax loss harvesting, any tax losses that aren't utilized versus capital gains can be written off up to a certain limit, $1,500 if you're an individual, $3,000 if you're married filing jointly, of your gross income. Okay. Yep. So that helps to reduce the income, which then keeps you in a lower tax bracket for the utilizing Roth conversion. So these things work well together. It's all part of the plan and a strategy going forward.
And what we're doing on that front is, if clients are using CDCPA, we communicate them very easily. So we're saying, hey, this is what we're thinking about for a conversion, and we simply forward it to them, and then they respond with, yep, this makes sense to us as well. And if you have your own CPA, we have that contact information usually, and we can reach out to them directly to see if it also makes sense. But it's a coordination between our planning team here and in your local CPA to make sure it makes sense and you don't exceed something that you shouldn't exceed.
Right. Okay.
So anyway, that's what we'll be busy doing the next 3 months as we watch the markets and move forward. So Brad, enjoyed it as usual, and look forward to the launching a new topic here in our next podcast.
I'm excited about that. So looking forward to that.
See you later.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to a Wiser Retirement podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening, that way you don't miss any new episodes. We would also appreciate if you could leave a rating and review. If you have any questions about anything that was discussed today, head to wiserinvestor.com and reach out. We would love to hear from you. This episode was produced and edited by Lilton Moore.